Is Hildibrand good, and does it have good rewards? Hildibrand rewards you by giving you access to content you wouldn't have had otherwise. I think there's some dances and some emotes locked behind it, but it is silly content that, to the best of my knowledge, comes out of Final Fantasy XIV devs, like this guy here, wanting to make content that they could experiment with rigging and like the messing and over emotions, but separate it from mandatory story. And it got loved, like a good April Fool's joke, and then we kind of wished it into being, and they have continued supporting it as optional, silly content. However, with the Endwalker 6.25 beginning of the quest-centric Relic expansion for the Relic, which is our upgradable weapon this expansion, Hildibrand will become required, much like Crystal Tower became required. As we are in 6.18, today we looked back at 4.57, going into World Visit, going into the Crystal Data Center coming online, going into a 24-hour maintenance like this, where we sat around and speculated at what it would be like, the beginning of a new PvP season, and asking ourselves, what if non-required content, such as Crystal Tower, one day became required? And as they continued to invest in server infrastructure. And so a lot of parallels to today. And Brian and I sat down and talked about this earlier, and there is a question of, should this have become required? We ended up largely just agreeing that it was fine how it was, and so we didn't do a great job of representing the people who feel that this should not be required, because we don't really totally understand that. And so I went out and watched some other community stuff after filming with Brian this morning, and I found Quasi's post on this, and as per usual, this legend over here did a brilliant job of representing, I think while he largely agrees with where Brian and I stance falls on this, he did a great job representing the other views as well, not just his own. And so I wanted to kind of have that discussion with Quasi, another Quasi. So let's dive into whether or not the Hildibrand should be required for the upcoming Relic.
So the producer live letter is over and the reception was generally positive. People
Yes.
are excited about island sanctuaries and Criterion dungeons. But there was a contentious issue that also arose from the producer live letter. And yes, I'm talking about the Relic weapon system, the new weapon enhancement systems coming in 6.25, being gated behind the Hildibrand quest line. Now, in case you're absolutely confused about what I'm talking about, let me just recap what's on the slides here. So Yoshi P mentioned in 6.25, we'll be getting the new Relic weapon questline. However, to get started on the Endwalker Relic questline, one of the prerequisites is that you have completed somehow further Hildibrand adventures. And that will then get you access to create the Mandeville weapons. And as you can see on the slide, it's supposed to be quest-centric progression. He didn't elaborate too much on what that means. And no surprises, further 6.x patches will continue to build on this system. And just a very quick scroll through on social media, be it Twitter or the Final Fantasy XIV Reddit, this is a huge hot topic with people on both sides.
For a little bit of context on that, Eureka was first presented, I believe, as best as I recall, with the term exploratory. So quest-centric, I would note that as a key difference to Bosges, Adnor, and Eureka, which were noted as exploratory. And while they largely have been very positive on their feedback of like how big the groups are and that they love that communities have formed around it, it's possible either they feel it's time for a change, they feel that is no longer the best fit for the game, or because Bosger and Eureka are actually still run by the community, maybe they just feel there's enough. I think that's why they originally didn't add a new deep dungeon to the game, and they were shocked at how many people were disappointed when they gapped out and didn't add a deep dungeon to follow Heaven on High, which is why we're getting one with 6.3. I think they largely thought they didn't need more because this game, through the level sync process, allows you to keep like legacy content relevant. So it's not always, hey, we're not doing more of something because we regret it. I think sometimes it's also, we're not doing more of something because we have some of it and it's time to add something else in addition to that thing.
Of the camp. Some people agree, some people disagree. As you can see from this Reddit thread, there were a lot of memes, a lot of comments being made about the decision, and there were multiple threads made about it. For example, this thread here had close to 3,000 upvotes, and there were definitely some very spicy takes in the comment section. Others started memeing about skipping cutscenes, with Godbird himself threatening to suplex you if you skip the cutscenes. So today, I like to discuss both sides of the camp. And I honestly don't think there's a right or wrong. Now make no mistake, not every part of a MMORPG, not every aspect of it has to appeal to every single player of the game. I honestly believe that
This is a common complaint in gaming when somebody pays what they feel is full price for a full product. And we get past, let's assume the product does launch with complete, because some games just launch incomplete. But there is a question of, did I pay access to everything? If you view it like a concert ticket, you pay access to get access to the full concert. And so if you didn't get to see the headliner, or if you didn't get to see the opening act, because of something, getting you to your seat or something like that, you would be very frustrated. If you paid for a ticket to a movie and you missed the previews, maybe they're not as important, but you might be mad about that. And so I think a lot of people expect a full experience because they view this as a piece of entertainment to be consumed in that way, where they should get to see it from start to finish, and it should all be geared at one type of consumer. However, I would say MMORPGs, while this one oftentimes by people gets categorized as a single player game with an MMO on top, I think that sends the wrong message. And I think it does send more of that, you should like it start to finish. I would view this more as a theme park. And if I go to my local theme park, especially, there's a very popular time of year to go in October here around that Halloween time. That's a common time to go. They have all sorts of discounts and stuff to go, and they encourage people to the park. And if I go with my friends, my wife doesn't really like roller coasters. And so what that means is anytime we ride a roller coaster, she's going to sit down with people's purses and drinks and whatever, and she's going to wait for us to ride it. I, on the other hand, do not like haunted houses. I don't like the act of being scared. I don't like that feeling. It's not something that I get a lot of joy out of. I don't watch horror movies really. I don't play horror games really, which is weird. Like I do like thrillers, things that make you think. And so, there's some movies that ride that line, and without somebody spoiling it for you, you never quite know which side of the line it is. But haunted houses are pretty straightforward. They're going for jump scares. They're going for nightmares. That's the goal. That's the goal. And so I know for a fact that I'm going to sit outside, and yet I can still get my full value of a ticket to the theme park by doing enough of the other things. And it doesn't make me mad that some people in my group might be there for just the haunted houses. And so I would, if you view MMORPGs that way, then it's a lot easier to say Relic content is optional content. Extreme content is optional content. Savage, Unreals, PvP, Sightseeing, Glamour, all of this stuff is optional content. And as long as you get the value that you paid in your ticket price at the door, you're fine. And so at the ticket price of, let's say $15 a month, I view it as I want $1 to buy me an hour of joy, which is better than any other form of entertainment, going and seeing a movie or anything like that can offer me. And so I want 1 hour of joy. That feels like a bargain. And so with the average MMO player playing 6 to 8 hours of games a week, hopefully across a whole month, 4.3 weeks in a month, that's 32 hours of gaming. Hopefully at least half of that they enjoy, and it's bringing that to the game. But if you play this game 32 hours a month, you cannot clear everything Final Fantasy XIV has to offer, which should be like going to a buffet, where that means you don't have to eat everything they offer to be satisfied. You get to instead view the buffet as, wow, because they have 100 different dishes on display, I can eat only my favorites, and my friend that's here with me can eat only their favorites, and we don't need to have the same favorites. The one exception with Final Fantasy XIV is you all have to take at least 3 bites of MSQ. I'm not asking if you like it. I'm not asking if you're allergic to it. I don't care. Suck it up. Eat your MSQ. You can chew it quickly and swallow it with soda. That's fine. You have to eat MSQ. And so Hildibrand has been like this brownie sundae that everybody loves, and now they're coming out and they're saying, okay, but some people here prefer apple pie as their dessert, and they all need to eat the brownie sundae. I don't care if you don't like chocolate. I don't care if you can't eat ice cream because you're lactose intolerant. Suck it up. And I think that's where the frustration with this has come from, is that this has historically been an optional piece of dessert, and now it's becoming mandatory.
That is personal preference. Some people like certain aspects, like the Hildibrand questline. Some people don't enjoy the humor, and that's completely okay. I bet Yoshipi and team is okay with that too, because hey, we are all humans, we are all individuals with different taste buds and preferences. There's a reason why some people gravitate towards raids. There's a reason why some people gravitate towards PvP, while others gravitate towards RP. Because at the end of the day, we can all agree to disagree, but there's no harm in trying to see one another's point on both sides of the coin. The purpose of this video is not to pass verdict, on whether it's a right or wrong decision to get the relic system behind the Hildibrand questline. I like to discuss both sides objectively. Let me start with the camp that is positive about this decision. And based on everything I've read in the comment section, this actually comes down to people who truly believes that the Hildibrand questline is actually worth doing. These are generally people who truly enjoy the Hildibrand questline. Now, I remember when I was a Sprout and I was just eager to see where the MSQs go, and I was like, yeah, I just want to do the MSQs and get to the next expansion, and people will always say, hold your horses. Make sure you do the Hildibrand side content before you move on to the next expansion. And as a Sprout, I was a beneficiary of.
So there is an argument there. That is a separate argument. Should you do the blue plus sign content, things that unlock optional dungeons, things that unlock all sorts of things? Should you do those with MSQ? From an efficiency standpoint, you're already there. You should pick them up. From a getting caught up standpoint, ignore them. I would say it's an option either way. With the blue plus sign stuff, my thought is if your plan is to use it to unlock the dungeon and then not run the dungeon, you might as well skip it. You can come back and do it at level 90 just the same. So if your plan is to unlock Hildibrand but not engage with it, if you're like, well, I'll just skip through it really fast and then go back to MSQ, then just leave it and go and do it later. But if you're saying, hey, you know, we're on this guided tour and I'd like to stop and read the various plaques along the way, and I'd like to stop, maybe have a little picnic, then the plus signs are a great secondary kind of extended director's cut addition to the MSQ. So some people don't like director's cuts. They're like, no, I don't want the extended cut. There's a reason that the one that went to theaters is shorter. It's denser. They've gone through and they've said, we like all of this, but we've cut the things that we think are the least necessary. They're still probably necessary, but right, can we do that? And so I think that, you know, if you're just trying to get the minimum amount of story, when I was doing the Guild Wars story, people were like, well, you should really do the dungeons. It expands on the story. But I'm trying to get caught up relatively fast. And so if I add the dungeons in, it's going to extend me into like 2025 at the pace I'm going. And I don't want to do that. And so I'm doing it without. And so I'm having that non-director's cut experience. Is that leaving things out? Yes. Is it making me ask questions that the answer is probably in those dungeons? Absolutely. And it would be the same thing here. If you don't do any form of side content, the plus signs or the regular side quests, your role quests, you ignore all your class quests, are you missing out on something? Of course. It's a summary by its very nature. If you skip every raid and alliance series that it doesn't force you to do, are you missing things? Absolutely. Otherwise it wouldn't be there. It's not like they're just empty blank quests. They obviously are doing something. But I understand saying, hey, how long is just MSQ if I skip all the plus signs? Right? How long is that? Well, several hundred hours. Okay, so I could just do that? Well, technically you should make it even longer. But I already think hundreds of hours is a lot. Okay. Then MSQ is the most core of the core of the core. Right?
Of many of such valuable inputs and comments that definitely enhanced my experience. And I must admit, when people told me about the Hildibrand questline, it didn't sound too interesting to me. Especially the part where someone told me that, well, the entire thing is not voice acted, but it's really hilarious and engaging. And I was just thinking to myself, but yeah, you know, the MSQs that await me is fully voice acted. But regardless, as a Sprout, I wanted to try everything. I wanted to form opinions myself. So
just to be clear, no MSQ is fully voice acted.
So I gave it a shot, and surprise, surprise, I actually did like the Hildibrand questline. I personally can appreciate the humor, because a lot of the jokes and comedic moments, they are actually quite similar to some of the animes that I've watched growing up. So to me, the humor is actually really familiar. Obviously, between Hildy and Godbert, I'm not sure which one is funnier. Both of them are absolutely hilarious, maybe for different reasons, but I definitely enjoyed the questline. In fact, you can find my reaction on this very channel. So naturally, on the plus side, people who are for the decision of having relic weapons behind Hildibrand, I can totally see this side of the argument, which is this is potentially a way for Yoshi P and team to let players out there come in touch with Hildibrand. Because there might be players out there like me who never had the benefit of having people advise or to give them inputs on what kind of side content to do. And maybe through this new relic system, they will get exposed to Hildibrand and they might actually enjoy the content. I believe Yoshi P and team shared that the Hildibrand questline is actually quite costly to make because of all the custom animations. So from a strictly business perspective,
but my understanding, to kind of rehash that, is that's also what it was designed to do. Right? And so it would be like you saying, I built a gym in my house, and that was a really expensive room because of all the equipment that I put in it. Yes, and that is perfectly, like when you're talking about the budget to kind of furnishing a home or something like that, recommending it to somebody else who comes over and they're like, well, how come your kitchen isn't done? You're like, well, my gym was really expensive. Yes, but like, it was also core to its function that it had to be expensive. The idea behind it was that it was a chance to explore and develop these tools around this. And so it would be like saying trusts are very expensive because they cause them to create a bunch of new NPC interaction. But as a result of trusts, I think we got in Endwalker a chance to quest alongside NPCs. As a result of that, we now have upcoming variable dungeons where we're going to have new dynamic interactions with NPCs. And so, yes, that initial thing was a huge investment, but it results in other things not being as expensive.
I can also see why they will want to expose Hildibrand to more people. So for new players that read about the new Relic system in Endwalker, they might be like, okay, I want to try that. And they would have to go and do the prerequisite in Hildibrand anyway. And from there, they might fall in love with it, and that's better return on investment on all the costs that they have sunk into Hildibrand. The other consideration on this side of the house is also that if you previously enjoyed Hildibrand, then you might love the Manderview weapon questline, because I would imagine a lot of the humor might be similar in nature, featuring the adventures of the semi-naked godbird. In fact, I wonder if there will be joke weapons included, including the legendary frying pan that belongs to the one mother of Hildibrand. I think there's a certain charm to Final Fantasy XIV, which is that at certain parts of the game, it doesn't take itself too seriously. And that definitely has some appeal to a part of the population in Final Fantasy XIV. And one last thing I'll say about this side of the house, before I move on to talk about the opposite side, for the people who don't enjoy the Hildibrand questline, technically they can go into all the Hildibrand questlines that is a prerequisite for the new Relic grind, and they can simply skip all the cutscenes, and they
could absolutely skip the cutscenes, especially for people that are only doing this because they want to get to the part where we level it up. I assume there's a part where we're going to run the Hildibrand battle content, or we're going to run Fates, or something that's going to be the grindier element. We haven't seen what they look like. Some people just do it for the cosmetics. I assume that'll be data mined soon enough. And then we don't know what their final form will look like. Some people also do it for the power of it, because they are always kind of your like best gear for a casual player. Your best gear for somebody that puts hours into the game but does not do extremes or savages or anything like that. And if they don't do ultimates as well, they are some of your better looking gear, and they are something that is very, very, very accessible. Bozja Zadnor, Eureka, they didn't require that you did the content well. They just require that you did it at all. I don't know if they're going to show off the initial things in the second part of the live letter or what, but we will see them no later than the beginning of August when we're live. But he may show them off on his pieces of paper in the second live letter, which would be slated for early August.
quickly get the prerequisite done. That is definitely an option. And I guess in this producer live letter, they did give ample heads up that you should get this done if you want to pursue the Relic weapon system. And honestly, if you skip all the cutscenes, it really takes a short amount of time to get everything done. And we still have months before 6.25 actually.
Eorzean Archives, good friend of the channel, has they said that it took them start to finish 6 hours to start the story for Hildibrand. Pay attention to every cutscene. It is mostly story and cutscenes. Do all the battle content while discussing it with their chat. And it took 6 hours. So it is something 6 hours or less, especially those of you that maybe like, oh, I used to do that back in ARR and then I haven't done it since. So you've already got like a chapter already pushed out.
Rolls around. As such, people on this side of the house will naturally say that they don't understand why the other side of the house is making so much noise about it. Now let me switch sides and talk about the other side of the house, which is the people who are against the idea of having the new Relic weapon system being gated behind the Hildibrand questline. Now again, disclaimer, I honestly think that everything in Final Fantasy XIV, just like any other video game, there will be aspects of the game where not everyone is 100% on board. But for the people who are not on board with the idea, doesn't mean they're wrong. I honestly think it's a personal preference. For the people in this camp, they generally don't see the point of why they're being forced to do Hildibrand content in order to get started on the Relic weapon system. Some even feel it's the wrong choice to gate it behind a questline like Hildibrand, which is a very divisive topic by itself, because humor is subjective in nature, and to their point, skipping cutscenes itself can be very tedious. The process of flying around.
There's a lot of gating being added in general. The next step of Tataru's Grand Endeavor has some existing lore gated. Sometimes it's just something extra, like if you clear something else you get an extra piece of text, but sometimes it's mandatory to clear certain content in the game that you do things in a certain order, and it's there to try to protect you. So maybe instead it should just say, hey, we highly suggest this, and you should have to click through a series of like "I'm sure I don't care" dialogue boxes. That way, you know you're kind of holding back on your experience. But I think as he kind of explained this did help me. I mean, this is what I like Quasi for, is he does a really great job of helping me understand, when somebody has a view in the community that I don't understand on my own, either because it is the way I would think or somebody that I play with thinks. I've played with a huge variety of different mindsets, and so usually I at least like understand the basis of where they're coming from, even if I strongly disagree with it. But with this one thing, Relic feels so optional to me as somebody that Shadowbringers was the first one I did start to finish while it was relevant. And then after that, I did Anima a few weeks ago for my first time for the story of it, and I had a blast. And so as somebody that's always viewed it as highly optional content, and I've always viewed Hildibrand as highly optional content, and I've always thought that there is a bunch of people that like Hildy and like Relic, and that those are people that typically fall in the more casual element of this game, I didn't originally really even understand, like, why is that a problem? Why not use it as a chance to explore existing lore? One of the things as I'm getting to know the lore in this game that I'm struggling with is sometimes I have questions, and some of the questions are things that will be answered just as I play the game more, because I'm just now this week going through 2.5 and Coils. I've done Shadowbringers and Forward, so I've got a gap of like really significant lore I haven't done. But sometimes it's things that I ask them in chat, and chat, they don't answer the things that they know I'm going to get to eventually, but they do answer some of them as, "You're never going to get that answer, Chris. You're never going to get that." They never go over that. They never address it. And that sucks a little, because there's a lot of really great things. And so this is an opportunity for Relic to kind of pick up and say, like, let's explore this element of things deeper. As we go into 6.2, we're changing the name of Beast Tribe Quest to Tribal Quests for lore reasons. And I would love to go back and revisit with those tribes and see, is it more than just a name change, or is there a significant change in that relationship? But that does mean that theoretically future tribal daily quests might, instead of adding a new tribe, might be a new set of dailies on an existing tribe. And I can imagine that would get a similar amount of frustration to this with gosh, spare no expense, did they not even give us something new? And I would be in the camp of, I'm really excited about this. And yet, I want more Namatsu. But, maybe to somebody that didn't really like the Namatsu the first time, the one advantage of the Namatsu being in game is that they never have to do them again. That's done. That's checked off. That's completed. Get it out of here. I don't ever want to see that again. And rehashing it would kind of undo that idea that at least if there's something in the game I don't like, once I've finished it, I never have to go back.
Skipping cutscenes, talking to NPCs, and to them that time can be better spent doing other things in the game they actually love. I've also read a few comments who are very concerned if we will get joke weapons because it's tied to the Hildibrand questlines, where maybe all the relic weapons are similar to the frying pan that Julianne uses. If so, the weapons they're picturing their mind probably is not too similar to the relic weapons that we are familiar with. I've also noticed that for some people in this camp, they generally really like, Eureka and Posture. They enjoy having like a brand new zone where there's new things to do in the game in order to progress their relic weapons. And to them, they have some concerns that during the producer life...
Just remember that Eureka was very, very mixed on its reception, especially in the early steps. Very mixed. And then there are Eureka fans that did not like Bosja. So just remember that, like, I have yet to see a relic that's universally beloved.
Life letter, Yoshi P mentioned that the progression for relic weapon systems in 6.25 will be quest-centric. There wasn't mention about a brand new zone like that of Posture and Eureka. Now, something to consider here. Even though Yoshi P didn't mention anything about a new zone, doesn't mean that it's out of the question. I guess we have to wait until the next producer live letter to see if we'll get more details. But I guess you get the point. The main crux of the issue for people in this camp who don't like the decision to have relic weapons behind the Hildibrand questline is that they think that the Hildibrand questline is the wrong choice of a prerequisite. And again, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. The jury is still out. We probably should wait to see how the weapon enhancement questline actually works, and maybe down the line it'll be more fair to give our feedback. But I'm also curious to know which side of the camp you fall into. One of the joys about playing MMORPGs is that the systems are ever changing, and with changes and new features, not everyone will agree with them. That is only necessary.
It would be fascinating if this turns out that Tataru's Grand Endeavor is our relic armor, our Omega questline is our Skysteel Tool new step, and Hildibrand becomes our relic weapon. So they now use what was a piece of content that tells us up to, but only to a maximum of one story. It either tells us something light or something heavy, but it is one story. And now says we are going to tell 3 different stories simultaneously. There would be something incredibly interesting about that, and this does pave the way for that, for them to put more story in game, which is something this expansion is going to have to do. It's going to have to tell as much story as possible, because remember, historically, we were setting up the next expansion off of point 4 and 5 of the previous expansion, and the previous expansion got to wrap itself up with point 1, 2, and 3. And now we wrapped up an entire 10-year saga in point 0, and from point 1 to point 5, we have to justify what is going to be an expansion arc. And so the more story, the more kind of pieces of paper they can put in that book, the more they can build up this new saga, this new 10-year world that we are living in. So I personally fall in the camp of let's wait and see. Let's not burn the house down before we've had a chance to go in it. And let's wait a second and let's see what this looks like, because previous Relic systems have defied expectations, good and bad. They have been different than they were originally presented, sometimes in ways that I really end up enjoying, and in other times in ways where I end up not engaging with that system. And so I would say, let's give it some time. We have a second version of the live letter coming out, and then we get to go into our point 2 patch, which is going to have new Savage, new raids, all sorts of new things. And then let's get to the 0.25, where we're looking at variable dungeons, criterion dungeons. We're looking at this. I mean, like, it's the half patch is going to be enormous this time around. And keep in mind that the first step of the Relic, for any of you that don't finish Hildibrand in time, the first step is usually fairly short, and it's a section that's meant to help you. Maybe you want to repeat it a couple times, get a couple of weapons. You're not sure which class you want to push through this content on. And so really the 6.35, historically, the 0.35 would be kind of based on previous relics and how they've rolled out, that second patch of it. So 6.35, looking at, another 4 months on top of this, would be when we would get our first meaningful step. And so you would only be like a very small amount behind if you didn't finish Hildy until like 6.3, 6.3 and a couple of weeks. You would really be fine. So you've not only got 4 months until you get to do this when everybody else does it, but you've got 8 months until you're behind what would likely be a group step based on the past. This looks like a departure from the past, so that is only a guess. That is only a general warning. I do my best to guess based on the past, but I'm wrong every bit as often as I'm right. And so that is just how I think it's going to work, kind of.